Black Christmas.
There was a little girl murdered over in the park tonight. Yes, I heard.
A high school girl's been murdered. Mr. Harrison's daughter is missing. And now at the house where she lives, the other girls are getting obscene phone calls.
Hello? What do you want? What are you doing?
Remember those idyllic scenes out of your childhood? Crisp winter nights, sleigh bells, crackling Yule logs? Remember those? Remember them well. After Black Christmas, they'll never be the same again. Black Christmas, starring Olivia Hussey, Keir Dullea, Margot Kidder, and starring John Saxon as Lieutenant Fuller. If this movie doesn't make your skin crawl, it's on too tight.
Welcome back, children.
Welcome back.
Boys and girls, my name is Pete.
And I'm Scott. And these are the movies that made us gay.
Yay!
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to our very first Christmas edition.
Yes.
We've got a really great show for you today, everybody.
Yeah, so like Pete said, this is the beginning of our mini Christmas series. We're not going to have the whole month full of Christmas movies, but this is going to be the start of it.
Yes, indeed.
And yeah, and also a very special episode because this is our Friday the 13th episode. And what more perfect of a Christmas Friday the 13th movie than Black Christmas from 1974.
Oh my goodness.
We just watched it with our guest, Michael Varrati.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to the show.
I am so excited to be here.
Welcome.
And so we just met you like not 10 minutes ago.
Yeah,
but I feel like, but I always knew from Instagram, and we saw you moderate Outfest for Scream Queen, that you have a big horror following, and it's kind of part of your repertoire. So I figured you would be a perfect guest for Black Christmas.
Well, I'm honored. I love this movie. I have a long history of appreciating this film. To me, this is the pinnacle of holiday horror.
Yes, for sure.
So I'm very excited to talk to you about it.
And I wanted to do it for the show because I discovered Black Christmas in college, and whenever I talk about it with people, they either don't know what it is or they love it, and usually the people that love it are gay men. So it's just sort of a random genre movie that I think gay men have a special place in their heart for. And it has just a big cult following behind it, too.
Right. I mean, we could do whole episodes on, or whole podcasts on gay men and horror movies.
Yes.
And the horror genre and what draws us to it. And,
well, in fact, I do.
We could talk about that later.
Yes. But no, I think that it is interesting. This movie is so foundational for the genre in a number of ways. It is sort of the proto-slasher. It comes out 4 years before Halloween. Mm-hmm. We can see John Carpenter pulling influence on that, not just from a holiday horror, but sort of with the emergence of the whole slasher subgenre. But also, too, it is the leader of the pack in terms of holiday horror, which has become its own sort of thing. Because from Black Christmas, we see things like Silent Night, Deadly Night, Christmas Evil, and just sort of a whole...
April Fool's Day.
April Fool's Day, yeah. So from a whole kind of milieu, if you will.
Right.
Now, do you remember the first time you watched this movie? I always like to start each movie with memories of when you first watched it.
I'm fairly certain I saw this movie probably for the first time in college. Which is odd because I started discovering cult cinema and horror movies fairly early on because I was a devotee to USA Up All Night.
Right, with Rhonda Shear.
And
I love that show.
I saw so many things because of that show. And then later I would have to rediscover them because, when you're a kid and you're watching it, you think you're seeing like the most naughty thing. And
my
then
goodness.
You find out later that it was still edited for TV and you had to go and watch it on VHS.
Yeah.
But... Black Christmas was sort of a later discovery, I think, because of the fact that although it is so celebrated within horror circles, for a long time the world at large was not really aware of the movie. It was sort of an undiscovered gem. I know that, and I know we're going to get into it later, but even some of the people involved in it were not quite aware how much of a little cult following it had.
Okay.
So I saw this in college, which in a way was the best time to see it, because I went to college in Ohio where, if listeners are not from there, it snows a lot. So already getting like snowed in to anywhere in a school, like, it's relatable. And I just loved, like, the idea of these college students, that they're on their own, and it's right before the holidays. It was stuff that my friends and I we weren't sorority girls.
Right.
I'm sure some of us wished we were. But that's when I saw it, and I just knew. I was like, this is it. And I've watched it pretty much annually ever since.
So we have very similar backgrounds to this movie. I discovered this movie also in college. I went to school in Montana.
Okay.
I talk a lot about my upbringing in Montana, a very rural community, and I went to a state school. And I think it was for Christmas, my an old ex-boyfriend of hers, gave me a book of cult movies. And in it, I think that it was under cult holiday movies. And I remember reading Black Christmas from 1974, a precursor to Halloween. And it had a little write-up of how influential it was. And this was like 2004 or 2005. So I feel like even then, this movie was very still underground. And I had to track down this movie. None of the video stores that I went to had it. Netflix didn't even have it on DVD. I had to order this disc off of eBay from Canada. And I still have the disc,
which honestly is a great version to have, because it's a Canadian movie.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's so Canadian when you watch it too.
Super
I love
Canadian.
it.
I love a lot of the bit players when they come in. Well, what's all this about?
Yes.
Yeah.
You get a lot of about
Claire's boyfriend in his giant beaver coat,
and also his giant beaver.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no reference for wintertime or snow or any of that, so that kind of stuff is always blows my mind. I didn't catch this movie until you showed it to me.
Yeah, I had to introduce it to him
as a grown ass adult, and I also have a pretty well established background in cult movies and horror movies and all of that, and I just never sought it out. And when I saw it as a full grown man, it scared the crap out of me. These phone calls are not right.
Yeah.
I don't like them. I don't like listening to them.
You could never have a
Gross
horror
language
movie in 2019 with that opening phone call. You couldn't have it like that anymore.
Yeah, it's an alarming phone call, but I think it lends it immediately establishes what this movie is.
Yes.
And what I think is really kind of awesome about it, every time I watch this movie, I rediscover not only my love for it, but I also discover new things that I've not considered about. And what I think is really interesting is, obviously we can see the influence on Halloween because we know how close they are.
Right.
But even all the movies that came after that keep reaching back to it and borrowing. Because obviously the idea of a phone call menace was then utilized in When a Stranger Calls, which then immediately influences Scream. So I was actually trying to figure out if this was one of the first sort of like the phone call.
The call is coming
so
from
I
the
was
house
reading
inside the house.
I was reading on Wiki earlier that Roy Moore, the screenwriter, his first pass at the script was called Stop Me, and it was based on the Man Upstairs urban legend. And Moore also claims to have inspired by a series of strangulation murders during the holiday season in Montreal in between 1968 and 1970. And then the film producers, when it got optioned, wanted him to rewrite it around college kids. And when Bob Clark came on board, that's when sort of all of the humorous elements of it, and Bob Clark really wanted to make a movie about young people in college and make it believable.
Right.
And he wanted that sense of reality of how young people behave. And kind of, I mean, up until then, I don't think that you really saw an accurate portrayal of college kids in a movie. Maybe The Graduate, I'm thinking off the top of my head.
Are you telling me that Animal House is not 100%
I think
accurate?
that Animal House came out after this.
Oh, geez, Louise.
So it really sets the tone for a lot of movies about
old as hell.
Young co-eds, too.
Okay.
So, I think that the Man Upstairs urban legend inspired the movie, and then it just sort of, no pun intended, snowballed into Black Christmas.
I mean, if we're going to talk about the accurate portrayal of college students and the sorority house, we have to talk about Margot Kidder. And
Yeah. I love this performance.
I mean, well, not
Wait,
only
are you going to talk about how they don't actually, and no one looks like a believable college student?
Yeah, I was going to say, in particular,
This is
Margot
true.
Kidder and Andrea
Yeah.
Martin. But this is the 70s, and, you know...
You just sort of looked older.
Yeah, I feel like...
except, Keir Dullea, who is Olivia Hussey's boyfriend,
Yeah.
is 38 years old when
Oh,
they make
goodness.
this movie.
Has no business playing.
He
no
made this
business playing 20 years
after
old.
2001. So he was a space astronaut who
fully.
literally taps into time itself and then goes back to be a pianist in college.
That
Yeah.
one's had an interesting career because 2001 didn't really launch him
No.
into mainstream roles. Have you ever heard of that shady quote from Truman Capote?
About him?
Yeah.
No.
Cure today. How does that go?
Here today, gone tomorrow?
Cure today, gone tomorrow.
I mean... That's our little Howard Stern moment. Yeah, he's a great looking guy. He was great in both of these movies, but yeah, his career just didn't take off. But yeah, 38, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Goodness.
I looked
think
it up
Olivia
while watching.
Hussey,
at the
Olivia
time.
Hussey must
Yeah.
have been probably 21 or 22 when she made it.
Right, and yet the most matronly of all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Andrea Martin. Come on.
Fair.
Fair. Although, did Andrea Martin ever look young? I mean, she just... Matronly is a very good description of some of these gals. But yeah, I feel like part of it is the fact that, 2021 today, they look like children,
Right.
And in the 70s, 2021, you looked about 35. So,
Well, I do think too, and I rewatched this with my production partner because I knew I was coming to do the episode, and I was like, "Come watch Black Christmas with me, just so we can it can be our viewing this year." And we were talking about this very issue, the idea that I think that cinema has sort of distorted our reality of
Right.
what teenagers and young people look like.
Sure.
Because when I see someone
Yeah.
who's like 16 at the
my
mall,
God.
they look like a zygote.
Yeah,
And
child.
then when you're watching, say, Riverdale, they're like, this Archie, this sexualized human
Yes.
being is 16, but he's actually like a 25,
Has like
26-year-old
washboard abs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so because of our television and our movies, we have had like these kind of like hypersexualized college students and high school students forever.
right.
That they probably, they did cast adults in these roles, but they're just adults at the time, and people looked they looked more like Mr. Cotter and Welcome Back Cotter than they
Yeah.
looked like KJ Apa and Riverdale. So-
Yeah, true. I mean, Margot Kidder plays Lois Lane 4 years later.
Yeah.
Lois Lane, full-grown adult woman. So yeah, that's just. I think it's just part of the charm of a '70s movie, though,
Yeah.
and just the costumes, the just the way they style some of these women. I can't get over Andrea Martin. These like octagon like glasses that she wears, this like curly hair. Her boyfriend that looks like Gene Shalit.
Yeah.
Is it Andrea Martin's boyfriend?
Yeah, I think that's his boy.
That looks like Gene
Yeah.
Shalit. He's got like the handlebar
so.
mustache and the afro. And
And we only see him in that scene. He never appears again.
wait, isn't he the Santa? No, he's not the Santa Claus.
Yeah, he's the Santa
He's
Claus.
the Santa
he?
Claus. Yeah, later on. Oh my goodness, the styling's amazing. But there's a lot of crazy fur coats on men, like
Oh, yeah.
Dolores Van Cartier fur coats
I mean,
on men.
Canada in the 70s.
I guess so. You got to get from class to class. They didn't have a lot of like covered bridges or tunnels.
So we should probably set up where the movie starts, which is the week starting Christmas break. They're having their sorority. Do we know what the sorority is called?
I don't remember.
Gosh.
We can look it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're having their Christmas party before everyone goes away for the holiday break.
And it starts off with the POV, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is like everybody kind of an error set attributes to Halloween.
Right, but this, of course, comes 4 years
Yeah.
before.
I feel like so many people just kind of say that like Halloween with that POV shot is like,
I think maybe Peeping Tom in the 60s did it too.
Yeah.
Oh,
that I would.
Yeah, if you're going to go real deep cuts
all right, well,
of where that comes from.
push my glasses up over my nose. But it does start off with the POV of what's the character's name?
Billy.
Billy. Oh, my
Goes by the
goodness.
name of Billy.
Oh my goodness, Billy. He's wrong. There's something wrong with Billy. I'm sorry. It scares me to this day just thinking about it. I've got a clip of the phone call. We'll hold it until later on.
And we didn't get the first phone call because,
This is a family show?
Yeah.
it's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, it's gross.
So I take it that he's been calling the sorority fairly regularly throughout the month. So they know who he is when
moaner.
they pick up the phone.
Right, but I think this is the first night he's talked to them.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because Olivia Hussey says it's the moaner. So he hasn't said anything, yeah.
Which this is a good time for me to bring up my absolute favorite thing about this movie that I'm obsessed with and I think about all year long.
Yes.
Olivia Hussey's voice?
No, well, yes, but also the intensity with which Olivia Hussey answers the phone, both in the first phone call and then subsequently throughout, because I don't know, like, it's one, an acting choice, and two, whoever was doing the levels, like, pumps her levels up real high when she answers the phone and only when she answers the phone. Because it'll be like, blah, 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 blah. Oh, Miss Mac. Hello?
Hello?
Pardon? Who? Like,
Hello?
And if you know anything about Olivia Hussey, her background, she's from Argentina, and she moved to England when she was a young child. So it's an interesting accent, and it's kind of how she talks, too.
It is. She has been in a number of films, including Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, and my favorite other performance of hers is in Death on the Nile. But she always, she just kind of brings that like sort of punching words,
That breathy,
not
quite English accent.
Phyl. What's Margot Kidder's character's name?
Barb.
Yeah, there's a lot of hello, you're crazy. Oh no, that's it. Sorry. One of my favorite Olivia Hussey performances is the It television movie adaptation from 1990, as well as Topanga's mom from Boy Meets World.
Oh yeah,
yeah. One of iterations of Topanga's mom because her parents changed in every episode.
They need to get that one on the last season of American Horror Story.
Olivia Hussey?
Ryan Murphy, get her on the phone.
She was also the first time we saw Norman Bates' mom alive.
This is true, yeah.
Yes. She was
Before
Norma.
Vera Farmiga played Norma Bates, it was Olivia Hussey.
Yes, and Psycho 4.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Does it have the beginning?
I think
Psycho 4, the beginning, with
subtitle.
her and Henry Thomas.
Henry
Right,
Thomas,
and CCH
yeah.
Pounder is a DJ.
Oh my goodness, that's a good one. Look it up. Was that made for television?
It was made for Showtime, I
Made for
believe.
Showtime,
Yeah,
okay.
by Mick Garris, who also wrote Hocus Pocus.
Okay, I was going to say I know that name. Mick Garris. He's been on this show. Well, Hocus
We talked
Pocus
about him
was
on the show.
his work. So yeah, it just jumps right into the obscene phone calls, and we get a little bit of Barb and her like sassy like.
So what I think is interesting about Barb is that there's a lot going on with this character of like how she talks to her mom. Just like what is the history of her, and what does she call her mom?
The grade A, or what is it?
We'll
Calls her
find
mom a horrible name.
Well, anyways, we can go on.
Sure. So Barb's got like she's pretty sassy right off the bat. She does she grab the phone out of Olivia Hussey's hand at this point and just starts screaming at the guy on the other end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she kind of takes him to task,
Yeah.
but she's having a good time doing it.
Yes. Yeah. At this point, it's just a prank caller. It's just
Right.
like some boy that's just trying to bother them.
And my line that I wrote down when she was talking to her mom, I don't know if she was saying it to her mom or saying it about herself, a gold-plated whore.
Gold-plated.
Ah.
Love it. You
Yeah.
know, that old chestnut.
And Barb, I think, has a drinking problem.
Yeah, we think.
She's usually a little tipsy in every single scene of this movie.
Yeah.
And as it progresses, she keeps getting drunker and drunker.
Yes, I think that Barb being not the only character with a drinking problem in the film, but there is sloppy drunk and then functional alcoholic in
Yes.
the form of house mom Mrs. Mack.
Oh, Mrs. Mack. Oh, geez.
Icon, vaudeville icon, Mrs. Mack.
Yeah, honestly, Mrs. Mack is in a completely different movie than everybody else, and I am here for it.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's the Bob Clark influence that we have to
Yes.
put in this very shticky vaudeville character to lighten things up.
She has a hollowed out book
Yeah.
to hide her hooch.
B for booze.
Yeah. I mean, that is commitment.
It is.
She also has toilet booze.
Toilet booze, much like the dad on Good Times, hiding it in the toilet and when the alcoholic episode, or was it Willona?
It's attached to a string, and you just
pull
lift it on out.
She swishes with scotch, or actually the booze she drinks is sherry.
It's sherry, yeah,
which is really gross.
Yeah, that's gross.
Yeah, you are just you need it.
Yeah,
you're a legit alcoholic.
Yeah.
That's like drinking Scope just to get the.
But yeah, she brushes her teeth and swishes with it, which also I want to believe was called back to in Scream Queen season 2 when Dean Cathy Munch was swishing with scotch as well.
I didn't get that far in Scream Queens, and even Scream Queens has a very Black Christmas tone to it too.
Yes, well, Sorority House, a lot of humor.
Yeah, for sure. Mrs. Mack, she's amazing. Her delivery is amazing. Her hats. Her various chapeaus that she wears, her styling, and that's the thing. It's that time in the mid 70s that it's like the clothes still look very vintage. You know, the clothes haven't quite moved into like a modern era.
It would have been bought in probably like the mid 60s.
Yeah, she's wearing hats that she has on her head with hat pins. Like it's very vintage fabrics and that kind of.
But it's interesting too because the generational divide, which of course would be very prevalent in culture during this moment, is really like clear where it shows how the girls like sort of don't view Mrs. Mack as a human being, because even though she sort of dresses in this matronly way with her like hats and her sort of like old timey clothes, they get her this very kind of moo-moo-esque nightgown.
And they want to see her try it on.
Yeah. And
because wouldn't you?
Yeah, and she's just like, wow, cool, great. Glad that I am not a sexual being to
these
people. Yeah.
And they're like, try it on. She's like, no, I'm not going to put this on.
Yeah.
What, you want me to go to bed now?
It's hideous. Yeah.
That's true. I never kind of thought of it that way. That's so funny. Yeah, all of the hidden booze. We've got, what is the cat's name? Claude.
Claude.
Oh, man, her and Claude. And then, I was going to go right into her interaction with the father of this
we should
missing
probably
girl,
also mention that Claire gets picked off. She's the first one.
Yes.
Does Claire have any sort of like character note? What's her thing?
She pisses Barb off in the opening scene.
Claire is going to go spend the week. Like, she actually does intend to do exactly what the police say she's going to do.
Right.
She's going to go. Her plan is to go off with her fur-coated boyfriend to a cabin in the woods to shack up for the holidays. And that's what she's packing for when she gets plastic bagged by Billy, bagged and tagged, hauled up to the attic.
I remember thinking that scene where Billy jumps out at her in the closet when I first watched it was so fucking scary.
Yeah.
Too.
It is. Well, I mean, the idea of being attacked in your own home is horrifying. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really smart because that's why people don't really take her disappearance that seriously. Because, like you said, she was planning on just boning out, just like, okay, spend the weekend.
Yeah, there's a lot, and as we discuss the story more, it's the little threads and nuances that I think make this movie special.
Right.
In addition to just its place in the canon, rewatching it time and again, I'm sort of always taken by the fact that it does not do what a lot of slashers that follow do, where they just set up the killer and then the whole movie is a race to stay alive.
Right.
And I'm just kind of very grateful that we spend time with each of these people and realize that they have micro issues that are happening.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Much like Olivia Hussey and her piano-playing boyfriend.
Yes.
But I guess we have to get to
that was what I was alluding to.
Yeah, we have to get to that story. But yeah, so Claire gets offed first and foremost, really early in the movie.
He brings her body up to the attic and he props it up on a rocking chair, kind of out in front of the attic window.
Right.
So you can't quite see it.
Right.
From the street. You probably could if you were looking hard enough.
Right. And you can definitely see it for the end credits because cinema.
Yeah, exactly. It gets kind of scooted over a little bit. I think some of the scenes with Claire's father when he's initially looking for her are kind of sad.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some emotional stuff in here.
There's some definite moments where reality drops in on this premise.
Yeah.
Also, the missing kid that's found halfway through the movie.
Yeah. Now, is that just like a coincidence? Was I half watching?
I think it's supposed to be Billy.
It's supposed to be Billy?
That did it.
Interesting.
Would you agree?
I would agree.
Yeah. Okay.
What I do like, though, is that we never fully know Billy's motives, so
Yes.
we really can kind of apply our own ideas on it.
Well, and that's very Michael Myers. That Billy is a blank slate. He's the boogeyman.
So we're not taking into account the horrible remake from the mid 2000s.
Oh, we'll talk about that too.
Because they give him a shitty backstory.
And some of the most delicious-looking cookies. One thing that I always think about the 06 remake is when they deliver the cookies to him in the asylum, I'm like, I would eat those.
Those look good.
Yeah, Billy in the remake used to live in the sorority house, right?
That was his house.
Yeah.
That was his house.
With his sister-daughter, Agnes.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, because they they take certain lines of his phone calls and they make a backstory to it.
Yes.
Gross.
And they stunt cast Andrea Martin as the house mother.
Yeah, but she makes it way. She as Mrs. Mac makes it way longer than our OG Mrs.
And I want to say Michelle Trachtenberg is the Barb role.
Not Michelle Trachtenberg.
I think
right.
Yeah, wait, it might be Lacey Chabert. Because it's Lacey Chabert, Michelle Trachtenberg, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Katie Cassidy's our final girl.
Katie Cassidy's the final girl of that movie. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a rockin' CW cast.
Wow, yeah. Lacey Chabert and Katie. Jeez Louise. Kristen Cloakey? Oh my goodness, who are these people? I love it.
I do like that there's the leg lamp in the back of one of the scenes.
And the sanitarium in the remake is Clark's Sanitarium, a little nod to our boy.
All right. So maybe it's not as shitty as I remember. No, it is.
It is.
So, so immediately Claire's father comes to the school looking for her. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And he makes his way to the sorority house, meets Mrs. Mack, and she's awesome.
Yeah, and it is. I do really appreciate what you both said about how his arrival lends an air of gravity to this.
Yes.
Because that is a real world note of what would happen in a tragic moment.
Yeah.
But then upon arrival at the sorority house and interacting with Miss Mack and Barb, he does kind of start occupying a Bob Clark sort of space where he's like, I never. I
Right.
certainly wouldn't kind of guy where everything
sure.
that happens is he's disapproving.
Yeah.
The idea of girls being sexualized,
I certainly didn't send my daughter to college to be drinking and picking up boys.
Yes.
Well, I have a little bit. I thought this was a fun little line here.
You, Claude? Oh, Jesus, Claude, look what you made me do. Come on, Claude. Here, kitty, 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 kitty. Come on, Claude, I gotta go. Here, kitty. Oh, God damn it, Claude, you little prick.
This is very kind of you, Mr. Harrison.
Think nothing of it.
Was he giving her a ride somewhere?
Yeah, she had to go do some shopping.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you notice? I noticed on this viewing that I don't think I'd ever seen in Claire's bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of cool stuff in Claire's bedroom, and she has a giant poster of her boyfriend Chris. Have you ever seen that?
No. Wait.
There's a giant picture of Chris in his coat.
Well, maybe the inference is she's a photography student.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, I just noticed that on this viewing.
Yeah. Weren't they trying to cover stuff up so the father wouldn't see
Well, there's the poster of the granny flipping off the camera.
There you go.
There's the very 60s summer of 69 poster.
Sure.
With the butt on it.
Right. Okay. Well, the dad's a prude. He doesn't want to see all this nudity in his daughter's dorm room. I love it. So after Claire's father's in town, we have a drunken dinner with Barb, right? Where she kind of has a little...
Well, I think before that, Claire's dad and Barb and Phyl all go to the police station as part of the errand.
Right.
Yeah.
Because this is where we get the hijinksy fellatio
yes, indeed.
exchange number.
Yeah.
Did you get that clip?
I did get that clip. telephone exchanges.
Yeah.
That's another thing that dates this movie.
I'm a little too young for that. I mean, when did telephone exchanges kind of not become a thing?
I'm all into the telephone sleuthing in this film.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand any of it. I mean,
Yeah.
I had a rotary phone
Yeah, we had a rotary
growing up
phone.
and everything, but, like, I didn't know that, like, it was in that contraption-y room with the
It's
man,
like
which
with
happens
running
later in
up and
the movie.
down
It's
the
like
halls.
these giant analog contraptions that kind of track phone calls, or like for every single line in a community, there's like a little.
It's all physically connected to something.
It's all physically connected to something.
Now, as far as exchanges go, the only interaction I had with that as a kid is if you were calling another country, you would have to know the exchange. But
Right.
I don't know that a sorority house would have to have.
Well, I think it was just at the time. I think it might have been a thing that there were less phone numbers. I think they might have moved up to the 7-digit system.
Oh yeah,
in like the late 70s, early 80s. It was like a thing in New York, and there's like that song like Pennsylvania 65000 or whatever. Like that's an exchange, and like Murray Hill and all of that 555 like being KL5 or whatever. It's like these were exchanges that were in big cities, and I think it was a thing that there may have been less phone numbers. I guess just because the police weren't being that helpful or forthcoming with them, that Barb decided to have this little exchange with the cops.
Excuse me. Could you give me the number at the sorority house? Please.
Yeah, sure. It's fellatio 20880. Fellatio. It's a new exchange. FE.
It's a new one on me. How do you spell it?
Capital F E little L LATIO.
Thanks.
Don't mention.
Yeah.
This
Good old
actor
Barb.
was also in Porky's. Did you know that?
oh yeah.
So he's like a
cop.
Bob Clark player. I think that he's the gym teacher in Porky's.
Interesting. Well, I mean, yeah, so this movie's like, I don't know, it's just kind of playing on a bunch of different levels, I guess, with like the comedy and like...
There's a lot of tones going on at one time,
Yeah.
and it all works.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
I also think in this case, Barb was established as a character who doesn't take things seriously, but
Right.
in this moment, it makes sense because they don't seriously believe anything's happened to Claire, so they're not yet invested.
Right,
So of course she's going to screw with the cop.
right. It is interesting, though, that the cops are just very much like, oh, missing girl? Well, she's probably just, she'll turn up. Like... I don't know if that's just a conceit because it's a movie or if maybe that's how they, things were handled at the time. But it's just like, how are they not taking this seriously? This is under a minor that these people are saying.
And also, just coming out of the
I don't know, maybe
'60s,
she's
were
not a
like
minor.
the Zodiac Killer.
Yeah.
Hey, it's
Yeah.
Canada. They're not. They don't have serial killers up north. That's just for America or the United States, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. None of kooks up there. But then, yeah, we do get to the awesome dinner where Barb tells the amazing story about the mating habits of turtles.
Which is true.
Is this true?
Yes, I did my research. There is a breed of sea turtle that can have sex for 3 days.
Wow.
So Barb paid attention in ecology.
Yeah,
Yep.
I guess so. In her marine biology elective.
Yeah.
That's funny. She gets sent to bed because she's just drunk, right?
You're drunk, Barb. Go to bed.
Yeah. I love that her room has the the little like blown glass figurines.
Yeah.
That's so, oh my God, those are so 70s and 80s. Like,
It's also an odd thing for like a bodacious like sorority girl who's like body and just like sex.
Yeah.
Like, because I kind of feel like that's something like your aunt who doesn't have
Sure.
much going on has. Like,
Yeah.
these little collectibles. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think it's just to kind of highlight the way she gets killed.
Yes, of
just
course.
to kind of, so maybe they just
You get that shot that when Olivia Hussey comes into her bedroom, the figurines are framed right below screen, so it's a little foreshadowing of where it's going to go.
They do. We noticed a lot of that interesting camera work where they do the split focus.
The split diopters,
the split diopter. That's very I guess it's just very period. You don't see it
very
a lot
De Palma.
anymore.
Right.
Very De Palma, yeah.
It's not an easy kind of shot to set up.
Right?
No.
Yeah, it's like a specific lens or something, and it looks crazy. It almost looks like because you can see the weird line where there's a little blur in it, and so it's all in camera. I guess to modern moviegoers, we're just used to movies looking so perfect.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like movies just always look. Everything that you see in a movie is there on purpose.
But I think that it's the little imperfections that make these movies what they are.
For sure.
Yeah. I think that sometimes when things are so clean, it's not as good.
Yeah, agreed. And it gives these movies character, and it makes them feel more like movies. Like you can tell that they're like film and the imperfections and all that. But yeah, we noticed a couple of those split shots, and they're interesting choices, and I don't know if you don't see it. You could probably do that shot now in camera and you wouldn't even tell. Just have everything in focus, and it wouldn't be as.
Well, if you were doing it digitally, what you would do is you just shoot it twice. You do a focus on you, and then I change the focus to whoever's behind you.
Yeah.
And then in post, you just meld
split
those
it together. Yeah.
But everybody else has to stay perfectly still, otherwise it messes it up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a little trickier.
Yeah. Interesting. So, all right, where are we now? Can we talk about when Olivia Hussey visits Keir Dullea at the
the music
studio,
hall.
And she tells him her big news.
This whole subplot also feels very women's movement of the 70s, and I think it's the element of this movie that still ages really well. In 2019, it's still a very hot-button issue with people.
No, and I do think, when I was saying earlier how I think a lot of what makes this movie work so well is the nuance that's woven through. Really, I mean, in comparison to the 2006 Black Christmas, only because we just mentioned it, is the idea that a lot of modern slashers just set up like, here's what's going on, here's the killer, and oh no, we're trapped in this place, and we then don't spend a lot of time kind of learning about the people.
We're exploring these characters and what's going on in their lives.
And so, actually, for a good portion of Black Christmas, a lot of people either are not taking the threat seriously because they don't think it's happened, or they don't know about it at all. It's not really until the body is found in the park that anybody really reacts. And so at this moment, even though they're like, we don't know where Claire is, there is a general concern. Jess, Olivia Hussey's character, is by and large consumed with something that if you are a woman who has this news that you have to share with your boyfriend, you would be. And even though I was ribbing on her earlier, I do think it actually speaks to how Olivia Hussey prepared the character, because she gets kind of read by a lot of people for how kind of tightly wound she is in the earlier portions of the film. And I think that it has been telegraphed or miscommunicated that that's just kind of like how she is. But it's sort of like, no, now we know that if she's sitting there at the party where everyone's with their boyfriends,
she has a lot on her mind.
Yeah. And so then when someone calls and it's just like, I'm secretly pregnant, I don't want to have the baby, we now know why.
Yeah, true. God,
and
totally.
her brief interactions with her boyfriend, he does not look like a very nice person.
No.
So you can see why she doesn't want to raise a child with this person.
Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, you think like, oh, he's like, great, this is wonderful news. At least he's not like, well, fuck, get rid of it. But on the other hand, when she does say like, I don't want to keep it, he's just straight up like, you're so selfish.
Yeah, why would you do this to me today?
To me, Why would you to me? And then today, like, oh, yeah, your fucking piano, like, audition. Yeah, I get that it's, like, college and all that, but come on, like, this is a kid.
And one of the parts that I like about this subplot, like I mentioned before, you could put this conversation in a movie today.
Yeah.
And it would work.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, really, though, she could have waited until after his piano audition to tell him, what's 12 more hours. But hey.
But if she didn't tell him, then we
Right.
wouldn't have a MacGuffin.
Exactly. Because then it becomes, well, is it,
He's set up as the red
what's his
herring
name?
all
Yeah.
throughout the movie, and
Yeah.
he'll just appear in random scenes where
Yeah.
stuff is happening.
And what we are to infer by the end is that he's just baby crazy.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And the thing is, we get so later on when he does have his like flash dance style like audition,
His flash tent style audition.
right?
Yep.
And he just totally bombs it. He's doing this like crazy atonal like Philip Glass like masterpiece, but I guess that's not what they're looking for because he's like screwing it up. Then it cuts to, well, it doesn't cut immediately, but we get this scene of him destroying a grand piano that I'm assuming is school property.
Yeah, with each hit, I was like, that's thousands of dollars.
So much
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, you're gonna
But I mean, I guess that's just to illustrate how like
off hinge he is.
yeah, how
He's
unhinged
crazy.
he can get when pushed
can get violent
to this level, and he can get violent. He can destroy a multi-$1,000 piece of equipment that doesn't even belong to him. I don't even know what a grand piano would cost.
I know.
A lot.
I do love that way later in the movie when John Saxon just goes and kind of looks at that.
Yeah.
He kind of just communicates, as John Saxon always does in every role that he's in.
Yeah.
Just like kind of general annoyance before getting the
Yeah.
Do you think that when Wes Craven he casted him in A Nightmare on Elm Street, he was just like, yeah, just do Black Christmas.
Get me the cop from
I do think, so what's really cool about John Saxon is his career in horror is very multifaceted because before Black Christmas, he had done a lot of work over in Italy where he was in Italian horror films that he played the lead of, often as an inspector, which I assume is what led to him kind of getting
typecast as that.
Yeah, and then so he's in movies that Mario Bava made and people like that. But he also was a martial artist and appeared in a lot of movies with Bruce Lee. So
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was in Enter the Dragon.
He is in Enter the Dragon.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I knew that.
And he's he's kind of like the quintessential like square jawed like
Sure.
guy who's
Yeah.
just like, and it's just so interesting that a generation exactly 10 years after Black Christmas gets to know him because of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
When in fact he's like international.
Sure.
He was arguably at the time probably one of the most famous people in the movie.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Besides Ronnie Blakely.
Well, I meant in Black
You
Christmas.
meant Black
but
Christmas.
yeah.
I do. Side note: I do love the story in Never Sleep Again. That I think Wes Craven tells the story of John Saxon showing up and saying, "All right, these are my hair pieces. Which one do you want?"
You can definitely see what hairpiece he chose for this one. It is proudly on
He's
display.
like, let's build this character. Which piece am I using for this movie? But yeah, no, he does bring a level of like, okay, there's definitely good acting in this movie, and I think they all do, to a certain extent.
And he's another one who, much like we get this Olivia Hussey baby backstory subplot, and the Claire has the boyfriend, and Barb clearly has issues with her mom. I like when we see him at the police station. Because they could have easily just been like, he's the cop on the case.
Yes.
But we see him interacting with the other cops about stuff that has nothing to do with the movie. There's a jovial nature. Like,
they
these
give
are guys
the rookie a lot of shit for
Yeah.
writing down the fellatio exchange, and everyone thinks it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The one comes in with the buckshot in his ass from the local farmer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. There's like little bits of like there's extra stuff that I don't know if movies now just don't have time.
Right.
Just with pacing, because a lot of times with movies of this era, but actually for being, what is it, 74?
Yeah, 1974.
For being 74, it's not as leisurely paced as other movies from this
no
time frame are.
It moves pretty
It
fast.
does move fast.
It's under
yeah.
2 hours.
Yeah. And you do feel, because I know sometimes, coming from our like MTV generation and how we're just, used to fast cuts and all that. Sometimes with older movies, you feel the editing, you feel the pacing as being very different. Even when you watch something like the very first Star Wars movie, you're just like, oh man, this movie is old because it is paced they are taking their sweet time. But This movie doesn't feel that way. It feels very modern in its pacing, at least, if not in the visuals and the clothing, but it's paced really, really snappy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Where do we go next? What's happening next on?
Well, Barb's in bed.
Oh my goodness.
Which would be as far advanced in because Olivia Hussey and Keir Dullea have the conversation before Barb goes to bed.
Right.
And we've talked about this. Barb talks about turtle banging. They send her to bed. And then, if I'm not mistaken, this is when some of the people leave, and Ms. Mack is on her way to her sister's. The taxi guy, who is very insistent, is outside, and she hears Claude in the attic.
Yes.
You get that great shot of when she pokes her head up in the attic, and she sees Claire in the chair, and then she gets whacked in the head by...
What is, like a pulley?
A pulley? I don't know why this is in the attic. There's a lot of shit in this attic that I'm kind of wondering.
Yeah.
Was it there from a previous owner? Why is there a rocking horse in the attic?
Well, maybe sorority theme parties.
Yeah. And the movie attics always have there's always like
a dress form.
A dress form in the corner. Yeah. But I mean, you gotta pad out the attic with stuff. But yeah, I feel like it's straight up like a pulley.
Miss Mack has a really good movie death.
She really does.
She does. Yeah.
Well, because we don't really see... I think it's sort of implied because he throws the hook of the pulley at her. It's implied that the hook probably impales her in some way.
Yes.
But then we see him hoist
He
her
drags her up.
Yeah, which is great. Into that crawl space attic door.
Yeah. And there's moving of the body, much like in Halloween, where it's these people, the kids are killed in certain spots in the house, but later on when Laurie runs through the house, she finds them in different places, right? Because he pulls up Claire and puts her in the chair, and then he moves Mrs. Mack into the weird crawl space.
He brings Andrea Martin to Barb's room.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got a lot of time.
He's all about design.
Yes. He's got to place them he's very specific.
He has a plan.
Yeah. He's got the weird red eye for it.
Yeah. Or he's just just a little OCD as well, on top of everything else. But yeah, so that's the end of our Mrs. Mack. Poor dear.
Gone but not forgotten.
Why do drag queens not do Mrs. Mack more often?
Yeah, I still feel like this movie is a little less...
It's still... I mean, even though I would say within the past 10 years since the remake, it has kind of gotten its recognition in horror. But yeah, it still is under the radar with certain people.
Well, since we already sort of talked about the remake, I do know that Andrea Martin, when they approached her to play Mrs. Mack in the new one, she confessed to the filmmaker that she hadn't even thought about the movie in 32 years.
Wow.
So it's
and I would imagine that probably Olivia Hussey probably has a similar relationship with it.
Yeah.
That she probably had to be told by somebody in the mid-2000s that this movie is super beloved.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an interview on the Scream Factory Blu-ray remaster of this where they talk to her, and she sort of speaks similarly. She just kind of was shocked that people were into this. And then there was some archival interviews with Margot Kidder who, was just... Yeah, it was great. I had a good day.
I'm from Montana. Margot Kidder retired in Livingston, Montana.
Mm.
She loved Montana.
And she loved all the animals and
Yeah.
all the wildlife.
All the wildlife. She would just... Supposedly, she would just feed wild wolves at her doorstep. I love that.
Margot Kidder's very beautiful in this movie.
Yeah, she's gorgeous.
You mentioned that earlier. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful women.
You
in
can
this
see
movie.
why they picked her for Lois Lane because there is a star factor with her.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I hate comparing women like that, but she's giving me a little Courtney Cox, just with her styling and just I don't know.
The statement choker.
Yes, that choker. Oh my goodness, she's wearing that statement choker the entire time.
Even in bed. Can you imagine going to bed with a choker on?
And doesn't it have a cameo on it?
It does.
That's got to be uncomfortable. I mean, she doesn't have an Adam's apple, but still,
right?
That can't. I mean, well, she's half in the bag when she's in bed, so she's not feeling anything, much less that cameo on her black satin choker. So, all right. So now,
I believe Jess comes home.
Yes.
to what she perceives to be an empty house.
Right.
And is this when Art Hindle shows up?
The boyfriend Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I think this is when... So Art Hindle comes over. They're kind of getting all caught up with one another. And then this is when the police show up to say about...
They're going to tap the phone.
Or is this
because Chris got a phone call in the afternoon too when she came home.
How many phone calls does she take through the movie from Billy?
She does the first one.
Yeah.
When she comes home and she changes into her robe.
Right.
And she meets Keir Dullea, that And then doesn't he call back twice when the phone's tapped? Too?
Yeah, he has to call back twice because they don't
have him on the line longer.
Yeah, and she's like, I love when the police are telling her, you got to keep him on the line longer. And she's just like, it upsets me. And when she tells him, like, I don't want to keep him on the line any longer because it upsets me. I don't know why that little line always got me like, oh my God, how sad. Yeah. How scary. Like, would you want to keep him on the phone? Like,
I mean, could you imagine being like 22 years old and someone's calling your house?
Yeah. With these ugly calls.
Yeah.
I hate them.
And also the supernatural ability to like...
Okay.
Billy's ability to make multiple voices.
Yeah.
He can make farm noises.
Yeah.
He can kind of throw his voice.
And the
too.
voices like talk over each other. Because somebody at the very beginning of the movie, I think it might be Claire, asks, she's like, is that one person? So we know the filmmakers are aware that this sounds crazy. Because otherwise they would not leave that line in because it does sound like it's multiple people. It does,
and they can't hear it too because it's coming from the attic.
Right?
Yeah, because he's fully like screaming into the phone, and they can't hear. Well, that's okay.
Did you have a sample of one of the phone calls with her?
I do. I have one of the last phone calls with Jess and Billy, and it's not as horrible as the first one, but it's still pretty scary.
Hello? Hello? Who is this?
Stop. Oh, God.
What do you want? Why are you doing this?
Filthy Billy! I know you're there, nasty Billy! You answer this bitch!
Who are you? For God's sake, what are you doing?
I know what you did, Billy! Filthy Billy! Billy! Billy!
Stop this! Oh, Jesus Christ. Mrs. Mack?
And if you're listening, you're trying to follow along with what Billy's saying, don't bother. It's not coherent, like, he's not saying anything that we need to, like, understand, right?
But yeah, fuck those phone calls.
Yeah.
If you were to get those, ugh. And also, I mean, this was a time before, like, cell phones. It's all just, like, landlines, too.
Right.
So it's all horror that revolves around...
Not knowing.
Yeah.
I mean, not knowing, and also, at the time, like, just modern technology of just landline phones, too.
You know, you couldn't even get the box that Sydney got in Scream 2.
Yeah,
with the
you
caller
don't know where
ID.
these are coming from.
Yeah. They don't have that technology.
Yeah. And so, yeah, just the volume and just the, like, creepiness of it is always just so awful. And then, she immediately is just, like, screaming for everybody else in the house, like Mrs. Mack. She's looking for Barb. Phyl has Phyl met her untimely passing?
So we should probably
Poor
just
Phyllis.
set up the last act of this movie. Phyllis also bites it. How does Phyllis die?
Strangled.
She gets strangled.
Yes. She goes in to check on Barb, and Billy's behind the door and just yaks her in.
Right. Because at this point, Billy has already stabbed Barb to death with an icicle. right? Or
With
is it glass?
a unicorn.
A unicorn horn?
A unicorn horn.
Okay, so it is part of her glass menagerie.
I love how that scene is cut too. It's a beautifully cut scene with the carolers.
Oh, that's right. That's when you get the Christmas.
And also, I mean,
outside.
I don't know. I know that John Carpenter's Halloween 2 is noted for using music ironically with the Sandman.
Right.
But this is also taking a very classic Christmas Carol and putting it over something sinister and scary, too.
Right.
I don't know if that had been done a lot. It may have had, but this is probably one of the first instances that I can think of that cut a scene like this, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, those Christmas carolers, though, that was like the full-on like Mormon Tabernacle Choir that was outside like singing this one Christmas.
And they go on a long time.
Can you like, how do you get Christmas carolers to stop? I mean, you can pour boiling oil on them if you're the Addams Family.
Well, I just think it's funny because Olivia Hussey just kind of stands in the door and stares at them.
Mm-hmm.
And
go on.
We keep cutting back and forth between her and what's going on upstairs. You're just, what is happening?
Yeah. Is she like looking them all like direct eye contact, like with these carolers, like, go on. Yeah, so while this is happening, we get, Barb gets offed with a unicorn horn from her glass menagerie.
And then Andrea Martin gets
offed
after this.
Gets strangled.
So they set up, the police are parked outside, right?
Yeah.
And they've tapped the phone, and she has to keep them on like over a minute or something because they're tracing it with their crazy analog machines.
It's like hallways and hallways and he's got to like find like something visually of,
And this is where we get the calls are coming from inside the house.
Yeah. I feel like that scene is really effective when he calls her. And
it's my favorite scene of the whole movie.
He's trying not to
make her scared. Just put the phone down and walk outside. And then he biffs it, of course.
Yeah.
Because he has been the cop, the Porky's coach, has been ordered by John Saxon to get her to leave the house. Just tell her to leave the house calmly. I'll be there in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And the guy calls and he's like, "You need to leave." And she's like, "Let me go get Andrea Martin and Margot Kidder."
Yeah.
And the cop's like, "Don't do that," but like a little too dramatically. And Olivia Hussey's like, "I've been taking dramatic phone calls all evening." And so then she goes automatically to 11 because she knows something is up and tries to go and get the girls. This is when she finds the delicately arranged bodies.
Yes.
She has her big final girl chase scene.
But I mean, this is one of those like iconic horror moments that goes on to become like almost a cliche.
Yeah.
Don't go upstairs.
Yes.
And as she's going upstairs, like when you're watching it, you're just like, don't go up there, girl. Like, don't go in that room. You know what I mean? And it's that thing that now has become like the cliche of a horror movie, but they're doing it here and they're doing it effectively. She's scared and I buy it.
Yeah, me too.
And she cares that much about her friends that she's willing to risk her life to see if they're okay.
Yeah, because she knows or she thinks that they're asleep in the house. So when he's like, "You need to leave now. The cops are on their way. Just get the hell out of the house." What would you do? Would you be like, "Oh, fuck, those idiots. I'm out of here." Or would you be like, "Oh, let me just go grab them real quick."
Right.
Do I let my friends fend for themselves? It's just upstairs. I'll go run and get them.
And when he grabs her by the hair, too. It's
oh, my God.
Yeah, you get that great shot of Billy's eye between the door crack.
Yeah.
I love that scene.
Yeah, it's really good. Her acting when she is calling for Barb and for
that scene
Phyl.
always makes my hair stand up on my arm.
It's really good.
She's so good in that scene.
She really is.
Because it's very much like how you would react in that moment, is that you'd be screaming at the top of your lungs for your friends.
Get your ass down here. I mean, this movie has a lot of things. It has a lot of telephone rings, like actual like ringing telephones in it. And it's got a lot of Olivia Hussey screaming people's names.
Yes. Of which she delivers every time.
But yeah, and it doesn't get repetitive. I feel like
it's not like Poltergeist 3
where they're screaming out for Caroline. 147
and
times.
yes, we've done Poltergeist 3 on this show.
Well, as you ought. A High Rise and Laura Flynn Boyle.
Yes.
definitely made me gay.
For sure.
And some shoulder pads on Nancy
I know
Allen.
it's not the show that I was at. It's not the film I was asked to discuss, but I do always have to point out that every time poltergeist shenanigans happen, they're always like, we need to call Tangina. And I'm always like, why? Because do you remember in the first movie when she's like, this house is clean, and then leaves?
Not.
And it was not. It's
She's
sort
doing
of like,
a fucking bad
yeah,
job.
if you hire someone to come and do like a menial task,
Yeah.
like if I'm like, please change the light fixture in my bathroom, and the guy's like, it's all good, and then leaves, and it's not, I don't call that guy again. So
Yeah, she really was their Knott's Berry Farm solution.
she was.
Yeah.
If anything, Beatrice Straight did a better job.
She did.
And
She
had
gave
an Oscar nomination to
right
boot.
to add on top of it. She gave them peace of mind.
Yes.
I mean, that's all they really needed in those moments. But here we've got a little bit of this.
Phyl! Bob! Oh, please answer me! Phyl! Bob! Please answer me! Please answer me! Please! Oh, oh.
Score's pretty creepy too.
I like the score.
Yeah,
I like the score on this.
Yeah.
yeah.
Then
Yeah, that
proceeds
seems
to
great.
go upstairs, opens the door, sees Billy's crazy eye in the door crack, and then
And we
the
never
race is on.
Yeah. really get a good shot of Billy.
No.
Right? We never.
I'm
see
always
him.
curious if they use Keir's eye in that scene.
Oh, that would be an
If
interesting.
they used him as a stand-in. I don't know, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't if it was my choice. If it was my call, because then I think that would lead people to be like, "Well, that looks too much like
Yeah.
so and so."
We see him like in brief movement, like in terms of not Keir but Billy.
Billy, you see him a little bit in Mrs. Mack's scene,
Yeah,
and but yeah, it's just quick shots, flashes. You never get the full like Michael Myers, boogeyman stalking her kind of a thing, which is interesting that you never see the killer.
That's definitely
that
a
way.
choice.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I like it. I like that we never
Yeah.
fully see him.
Yeah.
Because, that would never happen in a movie now.
No,
At all.
Well, in the 06 remake, we see Billy a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Those flashbacks, man. Aren't there like crazy flashbacks with him as like a kid?
Yeah, where he's like
my
skittering
God.
through like the crawl space.
And his mom. Because doesn't it kind of set up that he lives in the walls or something?
Well-
it's like some people under the stairs shit.
Yeah, so basically in the 06 remake, it's established that Billy's family lived in the house that was then bought and turned into the sorority house after he killed everyone and sent to the insane asylum.
Doesn't he make them into cookies, though?
Yes, he sure does.
Yeah.
But
As you would.
he is hidden away because he is born with a rare liver disease that makes his skin yellow, and his mother, much like Elphaba's mom in Wicked, is like, I cannot have a child on the color wheel,
Right.
So I must hide him away. And then she because she's like horny for like some guy that looks like Joe Piscopo, kills the real dad, buries him under the house, and Billy's like hiding in the attic and knows all this, and then has the new boyfriend move in, but still somehow manages to hook it up with Billy. So Billy's the father of his own sister. It gets real askew.
Man. That's crazy.
It gets pretty cuckoo bananas.
That is crazy.
I straight up watched it immediately after watching this in preparation for the episode. So,
So you just watched
yeah,
it.
hence why I'm like,
And
oh,
then
yeah.
in less than a month, the new Blumhouse remake is going to be coming out.
Yeah, which I'm gonna say I'm actually very excited for. Okay.
I'm going to see it.
Yeah.
Opening day.
Because my reason, I think it looks like it is subverting the expectations in the way that I want a remake to.
Okay.
Sure.
I think
it's doing something new with it.
Exactly.
Too.
Because if you just try and remake frame for frame something that we already have, what's the point? But then also, you don't want to take something that we already have and sort of just put things in it for the sake of putting it in.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, Billy being Agnes's brother father.
Do you think this new Blumhouse remake is going to be almost referencing the 74 movie as a backstory?
I don't know. And
That
would
could be kind of cool.
I would be excited to see that.
Sure.
I just like the idea of it going in new territory because now I feel like I'm also getting another holiday horror movie.
Yeah.
That,
Sure.
yes, while it has the same title
It
as
has the
Black
same
Christmas,
brand of Black Christmas.
Yeah, but it's in a way, I hope it does what John Carpenter initially intended to do with Halloween.
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
Give me a new Black Christmas where it's a different Christmas story
Right.
that just happens to be horror. It doesn't have to be the same.
Okay, so this makes me casually optimistic about it because I remember first seeing that teaser trailer, which you see a lot in that teaser trailer.
Sure.
Maybe too much. But although there might be various reveals in it, too.
Right, but I sometimes wonder, too, when the internet gets real whipped up in a tizzy, like, oh, it showed too much. This is spoilery.
Right.
I think, too, now, and Blumhouse is actually very good about this, is we know how the internet reacts, right? So even though we know that the internet's going to get mad, it's sort of like you can manipulate your audience. Like by showing everyone's just like, it revealed too much.
Sure.
Maybe it didn't at all.
Yeah.
Maybe we just saw things that...
There's probably various reveals of that movie.
Yeah.
And they just happen to do the most obvious one.
Right.
I agree. Because sometimes you can see things in trailers that you're like, oh, and then there's going to be this character and that character, but it's just the way it's cut, and it's not that way at all.
Right.
And they set up that there's a Skulls-like secret society that is picking off all of these girls.
Fronted by what appears to be Carrie Elwes.
Yes.
Yep.
Right.
Maybe it's like the cult of Billy. I don't know. That's what I was kind of thinking today
The
when
Sons
we were
of
rewatching
Agnes.
Oh my God. I love it. Well, back to the show.
it. So
was our
Chris
horror
has her
movie
big
minute.
showdown, and she ends up in the cellar
Yes.
where she sees Peter
peering in.
Yeah.
Awfully suspiciously, I might add.
You think?
Yes, I agree. I agree. For somebody who's innocent.
Yeah. I know, it is funny. Like, even though he is set up to take the fall as the
Yeah.
red herring here, he kind of does some pretty, like, suspicious things.
Yes.
So maybe in the long run, he got what was coming to him.
True.
Because he comes...
There's probably numerous bodies in this guy's closet.
Yeah. All because he hit a wrong note or went sharp on the piano.
Right.
We don't really know what happened to the piano teachers, honestly.
This is true.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All those judges that didn't accept him into their program or whatever.
I love that those guys wore super official robes to be the only ones in the room with him.
Yeah.
So Peter comes kicking into the basement because he hears Jess's screams, and she, because she's being attacked, is suspicious that he is actually the murderer.
Yes. As would I. Even though she kind of already was put kind of two and two together when she was like, it couldn't have been him on the phone because he was...
Except once the message comes, the calls were coming from inside the house, it automatically puts Peter back
into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing that she was saying was that he was here. He was at the house already. So,
He
but now the
walks
calls are
from
there.
upstairs where he claims
yeah.
that he was taking a nap, which is really weird.
Also weird.
Right.
Yeah.
He is very suspicious.
Yeah.
And Jess,
never know.
while in the middle of being chased by the killer, sees him and just assumes that it's him.
Yeah.
As probably I would, too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course.
So then John Saxon pulls up to discover that Jess has gone to town on Peter.
I love how they position Olivia Hussey in that scene.
It's like that Jesus pet statue. You know the one.
Oh, yeah.
The Pieta?
The Pieta,
Sure.
yeah.
And she also played Mary, too.
Oh,
She played Mary in a made-for-TV Jesus of Nazarene from the 80s.
That sounds right.
Yep.
Interesting. Well, so John Saxon, he comes barging in.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And she is cradling, I assume, the dead body? of
Right.
Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I took.
And then they haul her upstairs and tuck her in.
Leave her alone in the house, too.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that this police force is not great. But they're not the best.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it ends ambiguously, right?
It ends with another phone call.
Another phone call.
That you can hear.
And then we have a crane shot of Claire's dead face in the window.
They still haven't found Claire.
I know.
They didn't search this house and go up into the attic.
No, and that's what sets us up where because Claire's dad faints from shock, so they all rush outside, and there's that one lone kind of lame sauce officer on the patio, but he's outside when the phone starts ringing, and Jess is just sleeping alone in the dark. So
I mean, wouldn't this entire house be a crime scene at this point?
Yeah, you would think so.
Yeah. Get
At
her
least
out of
search
there.
the attic.
Yeah.
Give her one of those, like, police issue blankets. Put her to sleep in the back of some car. I don't know.
What's going on in the Saskatchewan or wherever in Canada this was
They
shot?
they just don't have enough. They just don't have enough bad shit going on in that town to like
to really
have
think about it.
Yeah, to have a police force that knows what they're doing. But yeah,
I think this movie was shot outside of Toronto, I
Oh,
think.
okay.
interesting.
So in the province of Ontario?
Ontario, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Did she have the baby? Who's to say?
Well, she probably miscarried it with,
Yeah,
as
with all
much
these
that she's
frights.
running around
Yeah.
in the last act of this movie.
True.
Yeah. Well, I mean, save her a trip. Oh. Dark.
So so that was Black Christmas.
Oh boy. I mean, I still do feel like, for the most part, general public, it is still very kind of not underground, but a little bit more of a like niche.
People that know about film always know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, true.
But
definitely.
your random person off the street, the unwashed masses usually have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
But it is so foundational for so many things that follow. And I think, if anything, we owe it a debt of honor.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And I think it has it's got that repeated viewing quality that we often talk about on this show. And it's got those elements of these female characters that draw us to it.
And you kind of have your archetype of the horror final girl, too.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, again, there can be entire podcasts dedicated to just this movie and its, what it contributed to the horror genre in general. The idea of gay men latching onto these horror movies, all of that. What our show does is just kind of talk about why we watch these movies over and over again and what it was that drew us to them. And a lot of times it's these women, it's these female characters, it's movies with a strong female lead, as Netflix would say, and just something that made us as kids identify with these mostly girls, and watch them over and over again. And maybe little straight boys weren't as drawn to these movies the way we were.
Well, there's been a lot made and discussed about the connection to Final Girls.
Yeah.
Within our community, because there is, for queer horror fans, a draw to the final girl.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it does come down, in many ways, to the idea that in these movies, they often represent a different kind of otherness. Because usually the queer connection to otherness, people always want to talk about the Frankenstein monster or the creature from the Black Lagoon. But otherness manifests in a lot of different ways. And the idea that sometimes it's just someone who feels like a little outside of a group.
Right.
Laurie is a great example in Halloween, because even though she is with the popular girls, you can see in the narrative that she does not feel completely part of them. And it's sort of like they're sexual, they're party girls, and she just wants to belong.
Yeah.
And then ultimately the thing that sets her apart on the night that it all goes down is what helps her survive.
Right.
And so when you're looking at it through the lens of a little gay kid, and we feel that kind of kinship to powerful women, because women also know what it is to be subjugated by society.
Right.
And we can kind of project upon them because we didn't have queer icons. But seeing someone just trying to survive to make it.
Yeah.
And like everything in the world is against them, because it's not just really ultimately the killer in a lot of these movies. It's the environment around them, the boyfriend who doesn't believe you, the friends who leave, all of these things, so that like who's left at the end of the day? It's you, and you have to survive. And I think that we as gay men understand that.
Yeah.
And all of this goes on in this movie with Jess, too.
Yes.
Wow. We cracked it.
We cracked it.
It's the last episode of this podcast. We don't have to talk about it anymore.
And that was I was more speaking generally. Like I used Laurie as an example.
No, for
but
sure.
like it does apply more so to all the final girls. I always laugh when people talk about Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and say it's the gay one. I'm like, no, they're all the gay one. Because in the first movie, Nancy, quite literally, when no one else believes her, has to take matters into her own hands to save the day.
Yeah.
In parts 4 and 5, it's all about when the world doesn't listen to you, you have to turn to your community and draw strength from that.
Yeah.
That's all. That's queer.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. I love that. And yeah, I feel like this movie is just another example in a long line of these movies. And not every movie that we talk about on this show is a horror movie. You know,
No.
A lot of them are comedies, and but even the comedies have to do with these women, these female characters that kind of have to pick themselves up by their bootstraps and just kind of like make their way, you know, in the world. But it is a lot of those same ideas, you know, that we're talking about here. I love that. Yeah. And yeah, it's just that one thing about these movies that like little straight boys weren't watching, you know, these movies over and over again. I mean, maybe some of them were.
There was a
especially with
reason
horror.
why 20-year-old Scott tracked this movie down after
Yeah.
I could find it available nowhere, that I had to ship in my copy from Canada.
Yeah, but you're like, I will find that movie.
I will find this movie.
And you did, and now we can watch Andrea Martin and
I would like the new Shout Factory
the
transfer
Blu-ray
of this, though.
Yeah, for sure.
I bet that it looks really nice.
It is awesome. Actually, how they did it, too, is even though they did a 2K restoration, they kept the film grain in.
Oh, cool.
So it keeps that sort
Love
of
that.
aesthetic that it has. Because,
Yeah.
you know, some of the restorations, they clean them up too much.
Yeah.
But this movie, I think, sort of benefits from a little bit of darkness.
That's good.
And there is a fun thing on the Shout Factory remastering that they have an audio track with Nick Mancuso, who is one of the voices of Billy in the film. He does a commentary track as Billy 40 years later. And
How long did you last?
I made it about
When you
20
watched
minutes. It's fascinating, though, because it's really funny.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's intentionally funny, but he gets sort of the absurdity of it.
Right.
And they have him, and he's like, you know, he breathes. And like he just kind of like says things. Oh, there's Margot Kidder.
Oh my god!
But just like listening to that voice,
yeah,
because Billy doesn't have really a defined character, so he's
Right.
just sort of like someone there was genius enough to ask him to do it.
It is
but
smart,
then it's just
yeah.
the idea of making it happen.
yeah. Wow, yeah. The execution when you're actually watching it, you're like, and I'll go back to the regular audio right about now. Wow, that was awesome. That was really great.
Thank you. For
So,
having
do you
me.
want to tell us a little bit? I know that you just finished up with the Dragula season.
Yes.
So, you direct episodes of Dragula.
I do.
That's amazing. We are big fans of Dragula here.
Boulet Brothers
thank
We
Dragula
love
season 3 was
all of those
amazing.
girls.
Season 3 was great, and I love what they did with the cast this season.
They really took the show. You guys really took the show to the next level with it, especially how you put all of them together.
So I will say I came into the show for the third season. So the third season was the first season that I worked on.
Which is now available on Netflix.
Correct, yes. But I had been talking to the Boulets off and on because I've sort of been involved in the world of horror as well as the world of queer horror for most of my professional career. And then my day job is also movies, too. I do a lot of TV movie stuff. But the Boulets and I met through a mutual acquaintance, and every episode of Dragula opens with sort of a horror vignette.
Yeah.
And originally they had talked to me, you know, when we come back for season 3, we would like to have someone who actually has done horror movies to write our vignettes and help us with that. And I was always like, cool. Like, well, it was sort of like one of those, I was like, whenever you get it together, let me know. And
Yeah.
as you know, this was a couple years ago.
Wow.
And the gap between 2 and 3 was quite a while, too.
It was at least 2 years, I think. And I, as with most meetings that happen in the industry, like I like them and I knew them socially, but I just kind of was like, if it happens, it happens.
Right.
And if it doesn't,
Sure.
it doesn't. And then they called me and they were like, hey, so we're going to do this, but like more than just the intros, we would like to bring you in to help out both as a writer for like, you know, the things that we say and things, but also in the direction. So I ended up becoming the show's sole writer, as well as one of only 2 directors this season.
Wow.
So, and it was a great journey. It was a lot of work,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
what an amazing team. And I always, I'm as much of a fan of it as anyone else because the show does hinge upon the performers that we invite to compete.
Yeah.
And that's the chaos element. So
Yeah.
like, even though we know what the setup is and what the challenges are and what the exterminations are. When they walk out, we don't know what they're going to be wearing or what they're going to be doing until we see them.
Right.
So it's like, it's cool to work on a show that you can like spend 14, 15, 17, 18, nearly 20 hours in a day on, go home and pass out. And then when it's on Netflix, not be tired of it. To sit down and be like, I want to sit and watch this too because I remember this moment. Or because I was so busy shooting XYZ, I was not down in the boudoir while the competitors are all talking to each other.
Right.
And so, like, I want to know, like, what led to this choice. So it's a really cool process to be part of. I know that we have some plans and schemes for the next season when and if that happens. I have to be ambiguous about it. But yeah, so
that means that you all should go to Netflix and watch it.
Yes.
So you increase their numbers.
Thank you. Yes, please tune in. It's something you can do with your family this holiday season.
Gather around on Christmas Eve and watch Dragula.
And then the Boulets will come down your chimney and leave you something horrifying.
Did you get to meet Danielle Harris when she was a guest?
Yes, I did. She was one of the guest judges. She and Rachel True from The Craft were guest judges on our Halloween episode.
They were a good panel.
And I actually spent a lot of time with all of the guest judges because everybody who came in for the day would sort of have to like understand what like the whole breakdown was. Yeah. And it's not as easy to judge a show as one would think because you have to kind of like issue your thoughts in a succinct way instead of being like giving very long answers. So I would spend,
cut together really nice.
I would spend a lot of time, and I was a judge this season as well, which was also a learning curve for me because after I did my episode, then I could sit with Danielle and say, all right, here's what I learned and what will be easier for you. Yeah. But she's awesome. She's so cool. What I really like about her is she came in and like literally took the assignment super seriously. Right. Because and this is everyone was wonderful. There was not really a bad judge in the batch, but it's funny because some people would come in and initially would like, well, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Right. So they would say they would kind of like ease into it. Whereas Danielle's like, well, my job and what I was asked her to do is this, and like the first person out, she's like, you could have done this better, and blah blah blah. And it was awesome. And it's like, and she came from
those
a place
are always the best
judges
to watch on Drag Race. Are the guest judges that have like a point of view and give them feedback too.
That's why you want those people there because obviously it is inferred by inviting someone to the show that they are in some way an expert of one of the four tenets of Dragula, which is horror, filth, glamour, or drag. And so if someone is invited to be a judge, it's because they know something about that in some capacity. Right. And so and the competitors all really, really seem to respond well to the judgment too because they know what it is.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Bonnie Aarons from The Nun,
super cool.
She was one of my favorite judges this season.
One of my favorite judges to kind of like watch go through the process was Millie Shapiro from Hereditary. Because she was such a huge Dragula fan, which was like super cool to see. But she her episode was Hospital of Horrors, and she's very interested in blood splatter. Right. And she talks about it on the air.
She was super particular about that splatter. That was amazing.
It's kind of awesome. And you see it on, I'm not telling any tale or anything that I shouldn't because you literally see it on the episode. Yeah. When Millie talks to one of the competitors about the way the blood hits the dress, you can kind of see that particular queen be like, all
right. Yeah. And isn't she pretty young too?
Yeah. She's
like, okay, 16-year-old.
But it made perfect sense. When she explained it, you were just like, oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah, she's super cool. I know it was a great experience and a real gift to be part of. I've gotten to do some really awesome stuff in my career and being part of this and seeing like the fan base. Yeah. Because I've been very fortunate that I've made a lot of things that have played in different places and on television. And they've got, their followers. Like, I'm a working writer. I don't pretend to be anything other than a working writer, working filmmaker. I have to go to the grocery store myself, all that kind of. But working on a show that people are so intense about. Yeah. It was a new experience for me in the way that, like, you log on to the internet and the second an episode would drop, all of a sudden, you're like, boom, 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 boom. It almost got to the point where I was like, I get why a lot of people don't use the internet. And I'm not even like half involved with like that conversation as the Boulets themselves or the competitors. It was just awesome to see because that community is so excited. Yeah. And to be involved in something like that is great. Yeah.
Well, being situated in LA, we've been fans of Landon for a long time, and
I first remember seeing Landon at our local gay bar
here at the Boulevard in Pasadena.
At the Boulevard, and we saw Landon do Adam Lambert.
Yeah,
and that was the first time I'd ever had seen a drag king that polished, and I remember being blown away.
He's super awesome.
Yeah,
and also so nice. It's funny because right before I came over here to do this episode, I posted something about Nightmare 2 in my, ironically enough, in my Instagram feed, and Landon and I were talking back and forth about it. He's great. I mean, he's out there kicking butt. Honestly, I think that the only disservice, if there was one that happens when you watch reality television, is that people fall into archetypes of which humans actually aren't. Mm-hmm. So like people are like, choose the villain, they choose the this, they choose the that. But what I will say is that every single cast member of Dragula this season brought something sensational.
Yeah.
And so, and behind the scenes, like what you don't see or what wasn't communicated is how loving they all are.
Oh, sure.
I mean, if that's communicated, you could see they all pulled together.
Yeah.
But it's just sort of like, it's just like, I was proud of them.
Yeah.
So it's just like so cool. Like, you know, I remember when we shot, I directed Landon's crowning.
Okay.
And I remember being on set with the final three, and it was just, I remember even thinking, because we don't know when we're shooting it which one is going to win. But I remember thinking to myself, I'm so stoked for all three of them, because they all in different ways really communicated
for sure.
what this is. So
yeah, it was a strong final three.
Yeah,
this season, loved them all. Wow, that was awesome. That was some backstage knowledge on Dragula. Thank you for that. Cool. Do you have anything upcoming that you want to talk about? That you can talk about?
Sure. I stay very busy. I recently just did a horror short that was released to the Deku streaming platform called A Halloween Trick, which is a gay slasher piece that I did exclusively for them. And that dropped on October 30th, but is out there for people to see. You can also watch it on Prime through the Deku app there. I did just find out that a Killer Nanny movie I wrote for Lifetime is debuting on LMN on November 30th.
Wow.
It's called The Twisted Nanny. I wrote it as The Night Nanny. They changed the title. But it's about a woman who watches a group of children while the mom has to do overnight shifts in her nefarious schemes to steal them for herself.
Wow.
So that was kind of my surprise thing that I'm promoting, because I didn't know we were dropping it so soon.
Ooh.
So yeah, next week, well, as of this time of recording, but it will have already aired by the time this airs. And then I am doing a live show in San Francisco with Peaches Christ that will actually happen the day after this. So this is December 13th, listeners. On December 14th, if you're in San Francisco, Peaches and I co-wrote a drag parody of Gremlins called Femlins with Detox and Ms. Cracker and Fifi O'Hara.
That's so great.
I love that.
And it will be at the Castro Theater. We're doing a 3 p.m. and an 8 p.m. So if you're listening to this and you live in the Bay, please come say hello.
Who gets to play the Lady Gremlin? Who's Greta?
No, this
Fifi.
is...
Fifi?
Yeah, even though
I can see that.
Even though it's the first
and
one.
she did the Lady Gremlin on her 365 Days of Drag, too. So that makes sense.
Awesome. Yep. And so that will be happening. And then I had written to bring it back to holiday horror, I wrote a segment of the upcoming holiday horror anthology Deathcember.
Okay.
Which was 24 international filmmakers. We all, kind of like an ABCs of Death thing, we all did. It's an advent calendar, and each of us did a day.
Oh, love it.
And my story is called All Sales Fatal, about a woman who tries to return a package at the gift exchange counter and doesn't have the receipt.
Oh,
shit. What happens with that. And it stars Tiffany Shepis, who is a very popular scream queen. horror icon, Ryan Fisher, who was recently on American Horror Story, and Jeffrey Reddick, who created Final Destination. They're all in it.
Wow.
So I've got that, and yeah, just lots of stuff coming up. Watch Dragula on Netflix. A lot of my old stuff is out there. I have written a lot of Lifetime holiday movies that air in regular rotation. Check your local listings. They all have Christmas in the title. You'll forget them by the time you stop listening. So just IMDb it. So
Cool. Awesome. Wow, that's great.
Thank you.
Look up our guest, Michael Varrati, guys. Would you like to plug your social media? Or?
Yeah, my social media, the best place to follow me is on Twitter because that's where I'm the most active. It's at Michael Varrati. That's V as in Victor, ARRATI. I'm on Instagram, same name. I also host the podcast Dead for Filth, the podcast for all things queer, horror, and beyond, where we sit once a week with somebody and talk to them about their journey in horror. I've had people from all across the industry come and share their stories with me. We're currently on hiatus, but we'll be back in 2020. So you can follow us wherever podcasts are found and at Dead for Filth on Twitter and Instagram. I've done that a time or two.
Work. That's awesome. Wow. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
This was so much fun. Well, we would love it if you would rate and review our show.
Give us 5 stars.
Yeah, go to iTunes and give us 5 stars. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook. We're at Movies That Made Us Gay. We're also on Twitter at MTMUG That's Movies That Made Us Gay Pod. Drop us a line. Drop us a line on Instagram. Send us a message if you have any movies that you would like us to review.
We're getting to the end of the year.
Yes, we are.
We're sort of wrapping up season 1. That's crazy.
Yes, indeed. Our little show, tacky little show.
Tacky little show, like almost 30 episodes now.
Yeah, wow. Thanks for
We've only been doing this
everybody.
since like May.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, we just started. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on our show one last time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back next week. Merry Christmas. Bye.
Bye.